They say when one door closes, another opens. But nobody ever talks about the long hallway in between, the one where shadows stretch long and silence echoes louder than any scream. That's where I was, in that lonely hallway, when the divorce papers were signed. 20 years of marriage dissolved with a pen stroke. It had been a month since he left, and the only things that stayed were the horses, the fences, and the boy who used to be my little man, now standing tall and quiet beside me.
Jake.
19, lean with broad shoulders that had just started to outgrow his shirts. He came home from college when I asked for help with the ranch. I told myself it was temporary, just until I got back on my feet. But deep down, I think we both knew he was coming home for more than just the horses. The first week was awkward. I wasn't used to having someone else move through my kitchen, my routines. But he fit back in like he'd never left, waking before dawn to feed the geldings, wordlessly hauling hay bales like muscle memory had never faded. I'd watch him from the porch, the sunrise cutting a soft gold line along his jaw, and wonder when he stopped being a boy. It was a Thursday morning when I first felt the shift. I was brushing Dusty, our old mare, in the south barn, my mind full of bills and feed orders, when Jake stepped in. He didn't say anything, just grabbed a brush and moved to Dusty's other side. We worked in silence, rhythm syncing like the old days, like we were still the team we'd always been. "You're quiet today," I said finally, not looking at him. He paused mid-stroke. "Just thinking. About." He hesitated.
"You."
"This place. How different it all feels now." I glanced at him then. His eyes met mine, steady and open. It wasn't a stare of a teenager anymore. There was something else there. Something searching. That night after dinner, we sat on the porch like we used to, two rocking chairs creaking under the weight of the day. The stars were out, clean and bright over the ridge. He handed me a mug of tea and didn't let go until our fingers brushed. His touch was warm, familiar, but it lingered just a second too long. My heart stuttered, confused by the electricity in that pause. We said nothing, just rocked, just stared, and something between us shifted. The next morning started like any other, coffee at dawn, boots by the door, the sun a sleepy eye peeking over the hills. But everything felt different. It was Jake. There was a new awareness between us now, humming just beneath the surface. Every glance, every word, every shared task on the ranch carried weight. He moved around me like gravity had shifted, like he'd found a new rhythm that only I could hear. After breakfast, we took the horses out to the upper pasture. The fence line needed repairing, and it was the kind of job I used to do alone, wrench in hand, cursing the wind. But today, Jake walked beside me, his shoulder brushing mine now and then. He made me laugh, really laugh, for the first time in weeks, teasing me for my terrible hammer swing, comparing my aim to an arthritic chicken. At one point, I bent down to pick up a coil of wire, and when I stood up, he was closer than I expected. My face was inches from his chest. I could smell the dust on his shirt, the salt of sweat on his skin. My breath caught. I didn't move. Neither did he. "Mom," he started, but the word came out rough, uncertain. I turned away before he could finish, brushing the hair from my face like that might clear the tension. "We've got a lot of fence left," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. That night, a storm rolled in, unexpected and angry. Rain pounded the roof, while thunder cracked open the sky. I was in the kitchen, barefoot, trying to seal the windows when Jake came in dripping from head to toe. "Forgot the tarp on the hay," he muttered, peeling off his soaked jacket. "It's drenched." "You'll catch pneumonia," I said, reaching for a towel. He stood there, hair plastered to his forehead, chest rising and falling from the run back to the house. I threw the towel at him, and he caught it, laughing. Then he froze.
"So did I."
The power went out. The kitchen sank into darkness, the only light from the flashes of lightning slicing across the sky. We stood like statues, the world outside roaring, while inside, stillness, raw and charged. Jake stepped closer, still holding the towel. His voice was low, soft. It's strange being here with you like this. Like what? I whispered. Like you're not just my mom anymore. He shook his head, frustrated. I don't mean that the wrong way. I just see you differently now. The words landed in my chest like a stone tossed into a pond. Ripples everywhere. I couldn't speak, only stare at him in the faint light. And then, instinctively, I reached out and tucked his wet hair behind his ear. My fingers lingered on his skin. The storm outside became a whisper compared to the silence between us. I should change, he said suddenly, breaking the moment. Before I soak the floor. Yeah, I nodded. There's soup on the stove. When the power comes back. He left, and I stood in the kitchen a long time after, heart racing, skin tingling where I had touched him. The days after that were different. Quieter, more careful, but no less intense. Jake started spending more time inside the house. In the evenings, he'd bring his laptop to the kitchen table, working on whatever classes he was still juggling online. I found excuses to stay in the room, folding laundry that didn't need folding, wiping already clean counters. We talked more.
About life.
About my regrets. About his fears. And one night, when I admitted I hadn't been touched, not truly touched, in almost a year, his face changed. I hate that, he said, voice tight. Hate what? That he left you empty. I swallowed hard. I'm not empty. No, he said. You're not. But you've been carrying too much alone. And then he reached across the table, taking my hand in his. His thumb brushed over my knuckles, slow, reassuring. My skin burned at the contact, not from discomfort, but from how right it felt. On Sunday, we took the horses out for a longer ride, past the creek, through the woods where the wildflowers had started blooming again. The sun filtered through the trees in golden shafts, and the air smelled of warm pine and wild sage. We tied the horses and sat on a fallen log, watching the river flow. Jake turned to me. I don't think I can go back, he said. To college?
I asked.
No, he shook his head. To pretending things are like they used to be, with us. My breath caught again. This boy, this man, looked at me not with confusion, but with clarity. And it terrified me. It thrilled me. It made me feel more alive than I had in years. I don't know what that means, Jake. It means I'm here. With you. And maybe that's all that matters. After our ride through the woods, something changed in how we moved around each other. Not with hesitation, but a kind of quiet choreography, fluid knowing. Jake started finding reasons to touch me more. His hand on the small of my back when passing behind me in the kitchen. His fingers brushing my wrist when handing me a tool. Innocent touches, but each one carried a spark that lingered long after contact. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the ridge, Jake came in carrying a dusty box from the attic. Look what I found, he grinned, setting it on the kitchen table with a thud. I raised an eyebrow. Is that? Our old photo albums, he said. Figured you might want to remember the days before I grew taller than you. We spent the next hour flipping through the pages. Birthday parties, muddy boots, Jake on horseback for the first time, clinging to the saddle while I held the reins. He laughed at his gangly limbs and wild hair, and I marveled at the way he used to look at me, even then, like I was his whole world. You were always there, he said, voice quieter now. Every soccer game. Every night I got sick. Every time I thought the world was ending. That's what moms do, I replied. No, he said, his eyes fixed on mine. That's what you did. That night, we lit a fire in the pit outside. The night air was cool, and the sky blazed with stars. I brought out 2 glasses of wine, and we sat under the dark canopy, the flames crackling between us. Jake looked pensive. Do you ever feel like we missed something? He asked suddenly. What do you mean? I don't know. Like life handed us the wrong version of the story. One where timing was just a little too cruel. I stared at the fire for a long moment before answering. Sometimes I think we're all just walking through chapters we didn't write. But what if we stopped reading and started writing our own? I looked at him. Truly looked, and saw not just the boy I raised, but the man he had become. Strong, quiet, fiercely loyal, and full of feeling he no longer tried to hide. The silence between us deepened. Then he stood, moved to sit beside me, and we watched the flames dance in the dark. At one point, he reached for my hand again. This time, I didn't let go. The next morning, I woke to the sound of laughter outside. I stepped onto the porch to see Jake leading 2 horses, bareback, toward the creek. He looked up, grinned, and called out, "Come on, Mom. You need a day off." He had packed a basket, sandwiches, fruit, and a bottle of wine. We rode to the far pasture and spread a blanket beneath the old oak tree near the stream. It was a place I hadn't been in years. Not since my husband and I had built the ranch. "Why here?" I asked. Jake looked up at the branches, sunlight breaking through like stained glass. "Because this was your favorite place. You stopped coming after the divorce. I thought maybe it was time to reclaim it." We lay side by side, staring up at the sky. He reached over and brushed a leaf from my shoulder, his fingers trailing across my collarbone. I shivered, not from the cold, but from the weight of his touch. "You're beautiful when you forget to be strong," he whispered. I turned to face him, heart pounding. "Jake." But before I could finish, we heard the crunch of tires on gravel in the distance. My heart jumped. Someone was coming up the drive. We scrambled to pack up and rode hard back to the ranch. As we rounded the bend, I saw a familiar truck, my ex-husband's. "What the hell is he doing here?" I muttered. Jake's jaw clenched. "Want me to handle it?" "No," I said, swinging down from the saddle. "I've got this." I met him at the porch. His face was tight, guarded. "Just came to grab the rest of my stuff," he said. "Didn't think I needed permission." "You don't," I replied coolly, "but you could have called." Jake stood behind me now, silent, solid. My ex glanced between us and smirked. "Funny. You two look awfully close these days." Jake stepped forward. "That a problem?" My ex snorted. "Nope. Just amusing. The ranch must get real quiet at night." He turned and walked into the house, and I stood frozen. The words hung heavy in the air. Accusation? Suspicion? Jake gently touched my shoulder. "Don't let him get in your head." "I'm not," I said, but my voice wavered. That night, we didn't talk much. Just sat by the fire again, our silence a protective shell. But later, as I lay in bed, I heard a soft knock at my door. "Can't sleep," Jake said from a hallway. "Me neither." He stepped inside, closed the door behind him. And I knew that whatever storm had passed between us and the world, we were on the edge of something neither of us could deny anymore. I waited, sensing he had more to say. Finally, he rubbed the back of his neck, a boyish habit he'd never outgrown. "Would you show me? Really show me how to ride better?" I blinked. "Jake, you've been riding since you were 10. "I know," he said quickly. "But the way you ride, the posture, the balance, it's different. Precise. Like you're part of the horse." That made me smile. "Flattery will get you a lesson, but you're not getting out of chores." He grinned, but there was something beneath it, something raw, searching. "Tonight?" he asked. "Tonight?" I laughed. "It's almost 10.
"There's moonlight," he said.
You always said the best riders don't need daylight. Just rhythm." I stared at him, unsure if this was really about riding at all. But I nodded. We walked together into the stables. The moon hung full and bright over the pasture, casting everything in silver. The horses stirred quietly as we saddled Orion, my most patient gelding. Jake adjusted the stirrups while I fastened the cinch, both of us working in practiced silence. Once outside, Jake climbed into the saddle. I stood beside the horse, looking up at him. "Sit deeper," I instructed. "You're tensing your hips. Let the horse carry you." He shifted, but it wasn't right. I walked over and placed my hands on his thighs, adjusting his seat. "Loosen your knees. You're gripping too hard." I felt him stiffen under my touch. His breath caught. "Easy," I murmured, stilling him with my palm on his leg. You have to let the movement pass through you. Let go. He exhaled, a shaky breath. Now watch your back. It needs to arch, not collapse. Here. I moved behind him, sliding my hand along his spine, gently pressing. Like this. He followed my direction, and I saw it then, how naturally his body responded, how much trust lived in that moment. Better, I said, stepping around to face him again. His eyes met mine. Can I try again from the start? He asked, voice quiet. But with you guiding me. I hesitated, just a second, but then nodded. He reached down. Ride with me? I blinked. Jake, please. And so I did. I climbed up behind him, slipping into the saddle, my arms around his waist. I felt the warmth of his back against my chest, the steady beat of his heart just beneath skin and muscle. Now move with him, I whispered. Follow the rhythm. We rode like that in slow circles, Orion steady beneath us. The world was quiet except for the gentle thud of hooves and the rustling of the night wind. My hands stayed on Jake's waist, guiding his posture, correcting his balance. And every time he leaned into me just slightly, I felt a current run through me. At one point, he turned his head, his voice barely audible. This feels right. I didn't respond. Couldn't. When we finally returned to the barn, I climbed down first and reached to help him dismount. Our fingers locked, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Just the weight of the night and everything it had carried hanging between us. Back in the house, we didn't speak of the ride. He thanked me quietly, brushing his hand over mine before retreating to his room. But I couldn't sleep. Not with the memory of his body against mine still burning on my skin. The next morning, the sky was gray, clouds clinging low like they were reluctant to let the day begin. I moved through my routines distractedly, thoughts lingering on last night's ride, on the feel of Jake's back against my chest, the rhythm of us moving together in silence, and the weight of his hands when he helped me down. He hadn't come out of his room yet, but I felt him. The ranch was unusually quiet. Even the horses were subdued. I decided to take a walk beyond the pasture, where the land sloped into the valley and the wind carried old stories in its breath. It was where I used to go to think or cry. And today, I wasn't sure which I needed more. I hadn't made it far when I heard footsteps behind me.
Jake.
He didn't say anything at first, just fell into step beside me. We walked in silence until we reached the overlook, a weathered wooden bench we'd built together years ago when he was just a boy.
He sat down.
I stayed standing. About last night, he started. My heart skipped. Jake, Wait. He looked up at me. I don't want to explain it away. Or pretend it didn't mean something. I exhaled slowly, my arms folding across my chest like I was bracing for a storm. I felt you, he continued. Not just your hands or your voice. I felt you. Like I hadn't in years. I looked down at him. His face was open, vulnerable, and so achingly sincere it made my chest hurt. I don't know what we're doing, I whispered. And I don't know if it's right. Neither do I, he admitted. But it's real. I turned away, staring out at the valley. The wind picked up, tugging at my hair. I raised you, I said. I taught you to ride, to brush your teeth, to face your fears. And now you see me, he replied, standing beside me. You see me for who I am. I met his eyes, and it was true. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man. A man who had stood by me through the wreckage of a broken marriage. A man who knew how to read my silences and fill them without asking. A man who, in that moment, looked at me like I was more than just someone who raised him. Like I was someone he chose. Let's go home, I said finally. We walked back slowly, the silence between us no longer heavy, but charged, like a rope pulled taut between two cliffs. As we reached the barn, I noticed the gate to the round pen swinging open. Jake frowned. Did you leave that? No, I said, already moving toward it. Inside, one of the younger Maras had gotten loose and trampled the training cones we'd laid out. Jake stepped in beside me to gather them, but as he knelt, he slipped in the mud, catching himself just before falling and catching me by the waist as I moved to help. I gasped, his arms locked around me, our faces inches apart. For a second, the world disappeared. The ranch, the past, the fears. It was just us. The heat of his body. The quickness of our breaths. And then, without warning, he kissed me. Softly, like asking a question. My lips froze against his at first, stunned by the feel of them, by the truth they carried. But he didn't push. He didn't expect. He simply waited. And when I didn't pull away, he kissed me again. Slower this time. Still careful, still unsure. When it ended, I was the one who stepped back. Not out of fear. Out of breath. Jake looked at me with 1,000 questions in his eyes. But I had no answers yet. Only this. I hadn't felt more alive in years.